Welcome to Built for This. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. My podcast features captivating conversations with intriguing people who have found purpose in their lives through their career, family, or life experiences, and just why they were built for this. Through the stories that you will hear, I trust that you will be inspired and encouraged to find just what you were built for. So let's get started. And welcome again into the studio for another edition of Built for This. And this will be fun today. We're going to have a fun little adventure down the lane of a guy who has done a lot of work here in the state of Texas. He was for almost 30 years with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. He also worked with the Texas Legislative Board, Budget Board. Jerry McGinty is my guest. And Jerry, thank you very much for jumping on the show today.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, before we talk a lot about interesting things, I got to ask you, how did you get involved here? Let's just start with the criminal justice here in Texas. How did that job come along? You spent a long time there, but was that something that you were always kind of work you were looking to get into in the sort of thing?
Yeah. Quite ironically, no. I mean, It's always amazing the path God will put you on. I wanted to be a school teacher.
A school teacher. Okay.
Sure. Whenever I was junior high, I decided I was going to be a math teacher, just like one of my favorite teachers.
Yep.
But as I started college, I just really drew into the business aspects. Went to Sam Houston State University. I'll kind of condense this a little bit, but got married while Tammy and my wife and I were going to school.
Yeah.
She graduated before me, so we moved to Houston thinking we were going to stay in Houston forever. Houston lasted about 9 months. Actually, it was interesting. Her mother got real sick and was in the hospital. At the same time, we had a family friend on both sides of our families who passed away in a car wreck. And we both talked about it and prayed about it, that if we wanted to raise kids, if we wanted to be blessed with children, we wanted to raise them at home. And so home was Huntsville. Yeah. So we moved back to Huntsville. About a year later, I graduated Sam Houston and started my career at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
Wow. All right. Well, I've been to Huntsville a lot, been to Sam Houston State during my past history down there. What was that like working? I know you had several facets, several positions there, human resources, and budget and communications. What was that like working for the Texas Criminal Justice?
So in Huntsville, the largest employer by far is the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Yeah. It is, I think, roughly 6,000 employees in the local area work for TDCJ. There are 5 units within the city limits, 2 just outside of the city within the county, and 2 more just on the other side of the county line. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the prisons within Texas, and those are all mostly older facilities. Yeah. And so something I didn't mention a while ago, 3 of my 4 grandparents worked for TDCJ.
No kidding.
It was TDC at the time.
Yep.
My father, my uncle, 2 of my aunts worked for TDCJ. Again, I never thought I would do that until I graduated college and knew there'd be opportunities there, even with a business degree. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No. It was how you get started there. But
and so what was interesting though was, so Huntsville's so large and so many of those departments, especially in the 90s as TDCJ was expanding throughout the state.
It was.
I mean, if you go back in the mid-80s, there were approximately 30 facilities. Mm-hmm. About 10 years later, there were 110 facilities.
Wow.
Spread throughout the state. Wow. The population grew from about 30 to 40,000 to almost 160,000. Spread, again, throughout the state. And that's an interesting study there in criminal justice. But again, back to Huntsville. So all the administrative departments are primarily located in Huntsville. Mm-hmm. Each of them sort of have unique features of their own. Mm-hmm. While I was a college student, actually, I worked midnight to 8 as the switchboard operator.
No kidding.
At the administration building. This was back before things were automated. So from midnight to 8, if you had a need to call TDCJ, I was the guy.
You were the person on the other end.
Yes. And not many calls came. And so if someone did call, I wanted to be able to engage with them and talk to them as long as I could sometimes.
Yep.
But was able to do that as a college student, blessed with having time to study. They absolutely had an expectation that a clerk in that role would be a college student. Yeah. What better way to have time to study than serving that?
No kidding.
But that was in communications, HR, classification of records, offender grievances. Many departments as I advanced in my career, I had an opportunity to work with a lot of great people.
Yeah, I want to talk about a little bit about that. But what do you think you learned? Like you said, you thought you were going to be a school teacher, but here you are on this job while you're getting through school, and then it becomes this long career. But what do you think you learned about yourself when you're in that atmosphere? And it's incarceration, it's criminal justice, and you're seeing a lot of aspects of that. But as you're maturing and becoming older, what do you think you learned about yourself in that?
That's a good question. I think being open and receptive to what God has before you, puts before you.
Yeah.
Sometimes the doors that are going to open aren't always clearly identified, and so just try to be available for them. I think that may be the best I could think to answer your question.
Yeah,
is just being receptive and open to those doors that may open.
And how did your faith help you along the way? Then leaning on that, just trying to figure out what your journey was going to be. And that led you to a bunch of different things within that system. But talk about how your faith was a heavy foundation.
Be glad to. And my favorite Bible verse, and actually it was it was actually in 97, someone pointed the verse to me. So it was a few years after this, but I go back and reflect on it and say, gosh, hopefully I was living that then.
Yeah.
Colossians 3:23. Okay. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, serving the Lord, not for man. And I think as long as that's kind of how I tried to do my job. Whatever I was doing, work at it with all my heart, knowing that there was a higher purpose in place. Mm-hmm. Never, and again, that goes back to some of those doors that were identified. Yeah. And that was true even as far as, I'd like to believe when the Legislative Budget Board gave me a phone call and said they were interested in me back in 2020.
Mm-hmm. So working in kind of a staff and a group of people, that were maybe the head of like-minded, mission-focused staff? How was that working around people that you looked to be mentored or from them? How did that help you along the way?
I appreciate the question. So in 97, I told you about the different departments I worked in. Yeah. In 1997, I began working in the budget department for TDCJ.
Right.
Very large budget. When I left there, it was about $3.5 billion. I think now it's about $4 billion a year.
Wow.
So a very large budget. And the staff within the budget department for TDCJ was broken up into components and operational components.
Yeah.
Somebody oversaw the parole piece. Some people saw the sort of maintenance, institutional goods and services, security. In that role, there was a guy, Brad Livingston. He eventually became the executive director for TDCJ and served in that capacity for almost 12 years. But he came to TDCJ from the governor's office, having served as the analyst for criminal justice for the governor, for Governor Bush at the time. Uh-huh. When he came to TDCJ, he had asked me to prepare a couple of spreadsheets, which, heck, yeah,
I can do that.
I can do a spreadsheet, and a good spreadsheet that tells the story. Mm-hmm. And we had a conversation that went further than that, and since that day in 97, shortly after he started, he took a liking to me, mentored me, and continues to be my mentor today. We talk every now and then.
Really?
Yes.
What's the biggest impact he's had on you all this time? And we're talking about now 30 years later.
Yeah.
And you're still.
I think, of course, now we're just good friends and we enjoy conversation. He's
a different perspective.
Perspective. He doesn't really provide offer much advice as far as RV traveling and stuff in my retirement.
Yeah, right.
But back when I was growing and he was continuing to grow, part of that mentorship was the growing as a leader, growing and developing yourself to be a stronger leader, but not just that, growing and developing others to serve in that same way. TDCJ has, I think, almost 35,000 employees.
Wow.
So when he became the executive director in 2004, and before then with me, but he started making that message clear to everyone, the importance of growing yourself, but leaving a legacy of growing others along the path. And that was something that I really took to heart and read a number of books and just preparing myself to prepare others.
I'm fascinated by that. We're going to get to the Legislative Budget Board career part of that, but him saying that to you about leaving a legacy, which I think a lot of A lot of great leaders instill that into other people to encourage that that's what you need to do. How did that weigh on you for the next X number of years that you need to make sure that you are focusing on your work, that the legacy you're going to leave behind is going to be one of that showed that you were a great leader?
It was. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice, again, 28 years. So memorizing the mission statement at that time was, it's actually in state law. Provide public safety, promote positive change in offender behaviors, reintegrate offenders into society, and assist victims of crime. It's written in state law just like that. And the expectation is the employees of the agency know it.
Yeah.
But I think I took it a little bit further with business and finance division employees to make sure they knew how they fit into that.
Yeah.
You can imagine as large as an agency that is. Let me just give you an example.
Yeah.
Accounts payable staff. I may not know the numbers exactly because it's been 6 years since I worked there.
Yeah, right.
But thousands, I'll just say tens of thousands of vouchers that they pay. And they're so one staff person may process 100 payments in a day just to be able to get, and then the next day they're processing 100 payments. Several years before I left, I started a program where I brought all the new employees in. We talked about ethics, we talked about fraud, we talked about a bunch of HR policies, but I spent a good bit of time with them making sure they knew where they fit into the mission, being mission-minded, where they fit into the mission. Because again, a bureaucrat who sits there paying bills, how am I providing public safety? Mm-hmm. And I said, and I would tell like the person in accounts payable, let me tell you how you fit into that. You fit into that because you get the bills paid, you get them paid on time. Mm. And a vendor who knows they're going to get their bills paid on time is going to be willing to do business with TDCJ.
It's a happy vendor.
So when TDCJ solicits proposals and has a vendor, you're going to have more vendors that are going to put in for that. More vendors competing for a proposal for a solicitation. You're going to have better price. Better price means I have more resources to put to the correctional and parole side and probation side of the state. That accountant in accounts payable just all of a sudden light bulb, like, oh my God. And so now they're not just paying bills, they're providing public safety. Mm-hmm. A person in payroll, same thing. A person in purchasing who's doing all these purchases now knows how they sort of fit into all that.
So yeah, it's fascinating that you could identify that and share that. Talk about how important that is in the workplace. That because so many of us are doing what may be perceived as a mindless task, and they're doing it over and over and over and over and over. But the importance of being able to illustrate the bigger picture and the personal impact that they might be having.
And the challenge isn't necessarily the employee themselves doing that role. Mm-hmm. It's the supervisor and the leader. It's the leader, the effective leader that supervises that employee, making sure that they understand that role. Mm. And so the employee that will get in there and they'll want to do the work just to get the work done. Yeah. Again, going back to TDCJ and accounts payable, they were getting the work done just so they weren't having to pay interest on late payments and stuff. TDCJ was one of the best at getting not having to pay interest in the state as far as agencies having to pay interest for late payments. Wow. And they just were doing that thinking that was what we're supposed to do to be effective, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Payroll employees wanted to get all the payroll paid accurately so that you didn't have a very large supplemental, and they knew 35,000, 40,000 employees wanted to get paid and paid accurately. But getting it done to meet that mission, all of a sudden that's a real difference. So the employee understanding that's one thing, and changing that mindset from doing a good job to doing a good job to provide public safety is huge. Yeah. But it's on the supervisor, it's on that leader to make sure that they're communicating that. And that was a challenge that I would have, not just with new employees, but new supervisors.
Yes. Okay, so you have the opportunity to go to the Texas Legislative Budget Board. Talk a little bit about how that came to you, first of all, and then the new challenges that you would take on with that before. And we should have told at the start that you're fairly recently retired from that, and we're going to get into that. But how did that opportunity come along, and then the new challenges that you were going to face?
I'm going to answer kind of a long answer.
I love it.
But In 2016, I had an opportunity to compete for the executive director position at TDCJ. Brad Livingston had retired. There were 2 finalists for the job, myself as the chief financial officer and the deputy executive director, Brian Collier. He and I were both fine with each other. In fact, we drove to the interview together. The interview was in Austin. We stayed the night. We had dinner. We drove back together. Had been friends for a long time. My middle son and his middle son, his middle son was my middle son's best man at his wedding. So again, have been very connected. But again, we're both competing for this job. And in 2016, he got it. I got second place, which is okay, whatever. But in the first place, he got it, and I continued to be his CFO until for the next 4 years. But in my mind, as I was on that path that I was talked about earlier, I thought 2020, 2021, somewhere in there, I'd probably retire from the state.
Yeah.
And would have retired with a successful career.
Yeah.
At least in my mind. So that's where I thought I was going. Late, I believe it was early 2020, like January, I got a call late one night from a staff person who worked for a legislative leadership office, asking if I would be interested in serving in that capacity. Never dreaming I would get a call like that.
Yeah.
My answer immediately, this was at night, my answer was immediately, I'll need to talk to my wife about it because she was right there beside me.
Yeah, it was not a good time.
Hung up the phone and we were actually laying in bed. I said, what do you think? And her answer was, our youngest had just gone off to college.
Okay.
So the nest was empty. We had done what we wanted to do. We were blessed with 3 children that we were able to raise them all in Huntsville among family. And now the nest was empty. And she said, I think we should give it a try. I didn't think she would say
That was not the answer you were thinking.
No, it wasn't. So I called the guy back the next day, said, yeah, I'd be interested in that. About a month later, I had an opportunity to sit down with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and Speaker of the House at the time was Dennis Bonnen, interviewed with them. In fact, I remember the last question they asked me a bunch of questions. The last question they asked me, I actually had to come back in the room for it. I said, if you were selected, how long would you stay? I said, it's a great question. I said, I think I'd like to stay at least 5 years and build you a strong bench of leaders so that it's a hard decision when I leave. You have a hard decision before you leave. And of course, my wife immediately knew that 5 years meant 3 legislative sessions, not 2.
You're right. Yes. Yes.
Which was fine. So the next day, I was selected. And now this is March of 2020. The press release went out, March of 2020, great. And then I got a call within an hour and said, we want you here like a week and a half later.
Wow.
Said, okay.
Wow.
So I told my wife, and we hopped in the car. That was a Thursday. We hopped in the car that Saturday, went to Austin looking for apartments, found the perfect one, kind of secluded it.
Yeah.
And we're making plans to move. Then the next weekend, so I would be in
Fast
office
track.
on that. That next week was, again, March of 2020, COVID.
Yes.
The world shut down. That I called my staff, my IT person, and said, give me an email address so I can send an email to tell everybody to go home. So when I started March 17th of 2020, I started in an empty office building.
What a time to start a new job.
I went to the office every day just because I was pretty much one of the only ones there.
Yeah.
And got to know all the 120 employees that I had by phone call.
Wow.
Yeah, by phone call. And I was not one to enjoy video conferencing or anything like that. And so what I decided to do was for them to get to know me and know who I was, the type of person I was.
Yeah.
There was nothing on the internet that said how to deal with employees like this that I found. So I found a list of 100 questions, and just 100 silly questions. And I would get about 5 employees at a time on the phone and say, okay, Brian, give me a number between 1 and 100. And he'd give me 52. I said, okay, what was your favorite movie as a kid?
Okay.
That was the question. Yeah. And he'd answer, and then I would give my answer. So that was just a way to
connect.
A way to connect. And use that. What was interesting was, and of course, even years later, I would go back to people and say, like Brian in the movie, I'd say, "Have you seen that movie lately?" Or whatever. Or if someone said something about their animals, I would ask them about their animals. It was just a good way to connect. So, but yeah, and then served in that capacity for a total of almost 6 years, just shy of 6 years.
So you've just recently retired,
right?
Here, and before we get into what you're doing right now, a couple of things. Let's go back to when you first took that job and you're learning your staff by asking questions over the phone and video conferencing and whatever. But talk about the challenges of being a leader at that time when there were when change and uncertainty was really the only two things that you knew were constant. How difficult was that to really take on a brand new job, something that's a pretty large scale when you're managing this gigantic budget, and yet you don't have something that you're really comfortable with, which is like you're a guy, I'm sure, that likes the face-to-face conversation and sitting down across the table. So taking all of that in at one time, what kind of challenges were you trying to figure out?
One of the biggest challenges for me was at TDCJ, because I had moved up the 28 years I was there. I moved up that career ladder.
Yeah.
From entry-level spreadsheet makers or whatever it was, being that guy. So I felt like, even as CFO for 12 years, I felt like I could sit down and maybe pay a travel voucher, maybe process a payment, or I could probably figure some of that stuff out just having used the systems myself.
Yeah.
Even though they had upgraded some, the systems were mostly the same. I just felt like I could do all of that work.
Yeah.
Now it was a lot of work, so I don't think I could do it all by myself. I don't mean that at all. I mean I could do some of it. Mm-hmm. When I went to the Legislative Budget Board, besides my knowledge of criminal justice and my knowledge of just the budget process in general.
Yeah.
Okay. So I brought that because we'll get off here for just a second. As the CFO of TDCJ, when the legislature was in session once every other year for 20 weeks in Austin, we were traveling to Austin. So we were traveling to Austin 20 weeks every other year, plus any times before and after that for meetings with legislative leadership.
Wow.
Or if there was something that happened at TDCJ, I was going to communicate how we were handling that. Mm-hmm. So I got to know a lot of these people, like the guy that called me that night, just over the years by the things that happened over that time.
Yeah.
So, again, so when I got that job in March of 2020, I came from a place where I thought I could probably figure out every aspect of it. I don't know anything about Medicare, Medicaid. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about public education financing, higher education financing, the parks, the regulatory agencies, some of the general government agencies. But man, I got some really smart people that work for me. Mm-hmm. And they just need a strong leader who can step up and be the face for them and care about them, and show a connection and care about them, and they'll pour it out. And they did. Mm-hmm. And they did. And so I think the lesson for me in that was to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
To say to the person who was sitting across the table, my subordinate, so to speak, but to say to them, I need you in that role. I need you in that capacity. Now help me figure out this public school finance project that we've got before us so we can move forward, help them move forward legislation or whatever.
Yep.
Once my mind sort of turned and I understood that I could not drink everything coming from the fire hydrant, man, that job got fun. That job was fun.
About that job and the funness of it, here you are, you're dealing with, you and your team, your staff, dealing with this huge budget for the state of Texas with a lot of different things you're trying to do for appropriations that are coming from the legislative. How did you look at that as a team and be able to deal with the numbers that were going to come out from your staff and know that, everybody's got a heart for something different, and where do we really, how does that play into it personally or as a team, trying to be fair, trying to be just, like, here's what the appropriations really should be. How did all that really become a challenge, or was it a challenge?
Yeah, well, the mission obviously is different for the Legislative Budget Board.
Sure, yeah.
But I think the staff had to understand that the investment that they put into the work was not for the decision they thought was right. Yes, let's just say yes or no, make it simple.
Yeah.
That they put forth a significant amount of analysis and spreadsheets and a narrative to show anybody they thought maybe read that thought the answer should be yes. But sometimes it's no. And there had to be an understanding, and I tried to make this very, very clear. Our job is not to say yes or no.
Right.
Our job is to provide objective analysis and let their answer be the answer. They're the elected officials. Millions of Texans rely on them to do their job. We are just there to help assist them, provide analysis in that decision. And that was something I communicated up until nearly the last day I was there.
Yeah.
Just constantly having to help them understand that the investment of your time is not for a decision. The investment of your time is to provide good analysis to it.
Yeah.
In addition to providing that analysis, the Legislative Budget Board staff also is required to do fiscal notes for each piece of proposed legislation.
Oh, wow.
So if a piece of legislation is being heard in committee, both the Senate and the House rules require that a fiscal note be written. How much is it going to cost to implement this bill?
Yeah.
So my staff did that. Same sort of deal. We sat down, we looked through the bill, we seek input from state agencies to understand how much they think it's going to be. And at the end of the day, we send a letter to the chairman. It comes under my signature.
Yes.
And it says how much it's going to cost. Some people are going to be very happy with that. Some people are not going to be happy with that.
Yeah.
If they didn't want that legislation to move forward, they may not be happy with fiscal note. Or if it's going to cost a lot, it shouldn't.
Yeah.
They may be. Anyway, it's a lot of folks, good and bad. You're going to have folks that love it, folks that hate it. And we're going to be objective in our analysis. That's what I had always said. You can imagine some of the legislation that went through the legislature just this past session.
Yeah.
And there were some things where fiscal notes, I got phone calls from various members and their staff unhappy. And as long as we were accurate in our calculations, we didn't change it.
You know, you talked about your faith a few minutes ago and how it's kind of helped direct you. So in this instance, not just this instance, but in all your time of working with budgets and certainly with the Legislative Budget Board, how was that just a steady guiding anchor for you in your own life that you could always fall back on? Like, okay, I did, just like you were saying, I did my work. Our team did our work. I can feel comfortable. I can sleep at night. I have my convictions with what I believe. I mean, was your faith involved? Like, you can be at peace with whatever comes out with the decisions if it goes yes or no.
I would say yes, absolutely. I think. I mean, I prayed about decisions that were to be made oftentimes.
Sure.
I think my faith, I'd like to believe it shined most during some of those times of uncertainty of COVID.
Yes.
So staff were at home. I mean, this was a brand new world for all of us. And so in many cases, the staff that worked for me had just finished college. They may or may not have been married. So there they were in their apartment or house, wherever, alone, working on a computer and staring at a computer screen.
Yeah.
So I was not one to do the FaceTime or video and stuff, but I would absolutely reach out to folks over the phone, and not necessarily an email, but I'd reach out and talk to them on the phone. I decided just to start doing an email.
Okay. Yeah.
Just an email update every couple of weeks, just to sort of let folks know, hey, we're here,
Yeah.
In fact, there was a tradition they had started before me. Every 5 years, for employees that were at the Legislative Budget Board, they got a little bitty plaque that said 5, 10, 15, however many years. And so I started taking pictures in that person's office beside the picture of their kid or picture of their dog or whatever it was. Yeah. And I would sit there and hold it up, and I would put that on the same email. So it became the most cheesy newsletter you can imagine, and not well done. It was just an email, same font, nothing bold or nothing. I did learn how to add the pictures to it and stuff. Right. But in that, I use that as an opportunity to share my faith. I shared my verse from Colossians. Yeah. I'll talk about that one in a second. Later that year in October, I shared about my wife's breast cancer that she had had a few years before that, and how we overcame that. And if anyone is needing to talk about that with her or I, please reach out. We had several. I still have a couple of employees that have let me know how their spouse is doing.
Really?
Yes. There's that connection, and the Colossians 3:23 verse. After I'd put that on the board, about 2.5 years later, a guy came to my office. He was getting ready to leave to go to law school. He came into my office. Last day in, it was one of those, I got to go see the boss.
Oh, yeah, right.
So he came around the corner. I gave him a hug, actually. And, he commented to me, he said, Jerry, I just wanted you to know, he said, when you put that on your email, I was so moved by that. I put that on my whiteboard in my office so I could see it every day. He said, I looked at that every day. When I made the decision to go to law school, I was focused on that. And I'll be focused on that when I go to law school. A couple of years later, I got a note from him that he graduated top of his class, I guess here in Dallas.
Wow.
A law school. Yeah. So that was so rewarding for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now retirement comes along. Did you know, were you ready? I mean, was that something like, okay, I think I've done everything I want to do and now it's our time?
I'm glad you asked that question because it was absolutely that.
Yeah.
It was one of those, physically, I just wanted to be healthy enough to travel. My wife and I talked about the idea of traveling and doing some of that.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in a place where I wasn't told to leave. I wasn't angry about anything.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed the folks I worked with and the people I worked for. It was, again, a very fun, rewarding job, but it was time. It was time. Physically, I think I was ready for that. And so yeah, we made the decision probably as the legislative session ended in 2025 that summer that I was going to go at the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, we're going to talk traveling, but that kind of prompted a question I had. While you're going through this career track, and I know a lot of, seems like a lot of people who serve, in the legislature, or or whatever they're doing, a lot of travel involved, away from the family. Either you're in Austin or you're having to travel. But for you during all of those years, how did you take that challenge on if you had to be, because you had young kids during this time, but the stress that it might put on you and your wife and family, which I know is very important to you, but also you have this job, a very important job. How did you balance that and always be able to keep that in perspective?
It was rough. My wife wanted to stay when Joan, our youngest, was born. My wife decided she wanted to be able to stay at home. So we prayed about it and said, we're going to figure out how to do that. And so she was able to do that, provide some part-time work, a bookkeeping type work that she had done. But so she was able to be there. But like I said earlier, I was traveling and I was gone a fair bit.
Yeah.
I think for me, when I was gone, as far as the kids, she was the boss.
Yeah.
You're doing what your mama says and that sort of thing. But when I was there, I think the key was being present. That sounds so cliche, but I mean, being present. Legislative session every other year. I'll just give you an example. Every other year. So let's just say it's 2009. So in the fall of that year, 2008, that fall, I would take each of our three sons on a weekend. You can imagine staying in hotels, right? At 20 weeks, you collect points and stuff like that. Yeah. So I would use those points. I would use points on the kids and my wife, and I'd say, so we'd take what we call daddy weekends.
Yeah.
My oldest, Josh, and I, we'd go to a basketball game and a gospel concert down in Houston. My youngest son, we'd go to a basketball game and museums down in Houston. Jacob didn't want to go to the hotels. He wanted to go camping, so that was no hotel points. That was just camping for the weekend. But it was just all about being present for them.
Yeah. And you had plenty of chances to be in leadership roles, and we've talked about those in your jobs. But, as a father myself, but talk a little more about just what that's like to be a father leader to your boys during those times, being a leader to boys, how important that is in our homes today?
You know, I was blessed with strong mentors at TDCJ and a passion for leadership development that was instilled in me. So that required, because of that, I wanted to read a number of books. Because of that, I was given an opportunity to go to a number of different conferences and trainings on leadership. I talked to my staff about it. And so it was just one of those that it was instilled in me. I never imagined until looking back how much of that I was able to bring home and help foster and grow my kids from. I'll give you an example. There was let's see if I can cover this right, but there was a training I went to called the Governor's Executive Development Program in 2005. It was a 3 weeks over a 3-month period, so 1 week per month, where we went and training with executive staff from different agencies, state agencies, about 30 or 40 of us that were in that group. Okay. And there was one session where a lady spoke on character and how you work to strengthen the character and commitment from employees by when you and here's an example. When you talk to them about something good they did, don't talk about that they did this good, this piece of paper right here good. Instead, the character traits that they put into that paper, maybe they persevered to get through the commitment they put into it. And then it's just the opposite. When the employee does something bad, don't dog them for their character failures for that one instance.
Yeah.
I carried that to the house. I carried that to my home, and immediately appreciated the fact, if they came home with a good grade, man, it wasn't look at this 100. You did so great on this. It was look at the commitment that you gave to your studies that put into this good grade. I mean, you were really focused on this. That's just one example I can think of immediately that I was able to carry that leadership development to my kids. Yeah.
And so now you're getting to travel and see your kids and talk about how. I know you and your wife talked about, we'll get to a point and we're gonna travel and do this thing. And so how has that been? You've launched out. This has been, fairly new, just this year, I know. So how has that been?
Okay, so I have to tell you my 3 boys. Okay, so Josh lives here in Denton.
Yes.
And then Jacob is my middle son. He is a high school ag teacher in Huntsville. Okay. And then Jonah is a physical therapy assistant in Galveston, where his wife is going to medical school. Okay. All 3 are married. Before retirement at the end of December, we sort of had laid out our own plan of exactly what we were going to do.
Yes.
Till about April. So we had drawn out a plan through parts of Texas, going out to Big Bend, and then we'd go up through Oklahoma and Arkansas. Our very first stop was in Garner State Park. Yeah. And that weekend, I broke my ankle.
Uh-oh. What a way to start off the retirement.
I can show you pictures. It has every piece of metal you can imagine in my ankle. And it was simply just tripped over an electrical cord. Oh. And overcorrected, and the overcorrection is what sort of caused the break. Yeah. The day before, we hiked 4 miles along the river, took selfies just had a great time. But again, broke my ankle. So that plan that we thought we had in place threw out the window. Yeah. So instead, surgery came, recovery from that surgery, and we knew physical therapy would need to start shortly thereafter, like in February, March timeframe. Our youngest son said, oh, come to Galveston. I can do your physical therapy. Oh. And again, that wasn't necessarily, obviously that wasn't part of the plan.
Not at all.
Not part of our plan.
No.
But how cool was that?
Yeah.
I got to go and sit. Now, mind you, it wasn't fun going through the surgery and the recovery of it. But for physical therapy, getting to sit with him and watch him with his coworkers and watch him with his other clients and patients, and then getting to share his expertise with me, I was thinking, as a state bureaucrat, whenever my kids ever came up to the office for anything, they just thought I signed papers and had meetings, and so that was it. Yeah. And so getting to go as an adult, as a parent, to watch your kids, and who gets to do that?
It's the best.
It was so rewarding, so rewarding. And so then we changed our plan again, and we decided we were going to see the other kids. So we stopped in Huntsville. Jacob, our middle son, we got to watch him interact with some of his students, and they had a big FFA banquet, Future Farmers of America banquet, end of year. So I got to see him interact with his students, interact with the parents of them, hear all the parents talk about how much they love him and stuff. So, and then also while in Huntsville, while we were there, it worked out because we were there. The high school graduation, some of my youngest kids in Sunday school before we moved to Huntsville, before we moved to Austin, were graduating high school. So we got to watch them graduate high school. Timing. And so then our next stop was here in Denton. Yeah. This past week, the week before, I got to speak at Josh's church, provide the sermon there, and meet a bunch of his friends. Got to go to his job. None of that was part of the plan.
No,
our plan.
God redirected those plans.
Totally redirected it. My foot is
used your foot for it.
Right. But it has been so rewarding. So we do have sort of another plan now that takes us up that same direction. Mm-hmm. Eventually, we'll see something that's not in the 100 or high 90 degrees.
No kidding.
But we've enjoyed it.
Well, before we run out of time, though, how do you see that? You've gone through this career that was very structured. You knew kind of what was going along during all this budget work, and now retirement, redirected a little bit by God on what your plans were. How do you see what your purpose has changed, and maybe you've discovered, what, this is my purpose the rest of my life now that I'm out of the working world?
And I don't know if I have a good answer for that yet. I don't.
Discovering it.
It really is. And so one thing that Tammy and I have decided we would do in our travels is be intentional, only make short trips.
Yeah.
So we're not going to, wherever we do go, it's only going to be 3 hours away from the last stop, stay multiple days, don't travel on a Sunday so we can attend a local church there on Sunday, wherever that might be, and look for opportunities either at events or volunteer events to sort of volunteer in the community. So we hopefully have created a path that would allow for open doors along the way. Mm-hmm. Where those doors open, man, I do not know. I'll say this. I mean, being here in Denton, again, Josh called and asked, "Hey, since y'all are on your way, would you mind doing the sermon?"
That's fantastic.
And so I was able to provide that to a room full of great young people and others that would that hopefully benefited from it. Yeah.
Well, Jerry, you have such an inspirational story, and just to hear about your life and what you're doing right now, and I just want to encourage you to keep doing that. And I really appreciate you sharing that on the show here today.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Built for This. Be sure to follow Built for This on your favorite listening platform and share it with a friend. Join me on the next episode when I will share entertaining stories of inspiration, encouragement, and purpose-driven experiences. What are you built for? Built for This is produced and recorded by Heart Media DFW.